It's Sunday morning, and our subject, we're in the book of Revelation. I hope I can scare you this morning with some things I'm going to say. I like to frighten people because the Bible says the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom and knowledge. And everything that's coming upon the earth is somewhat frightening. The world is living in ignorance. I believe about everything. I'm teaching on Sunday night on the doctrine of the devil, and I believe that this nation is being hypnotized and mesmerized, and I believe it's been going on for quite a long time. I'm studying mass mind control, and I believe that's what's going on in the world today, and I'll be talking about that tonight. But it goes along with what we're going to be talking about this morning. We're in the book of Revelation, where I'm all over Revelation. It's hard to say exactly where I am. I've been in the 20th and 21st chapter, but we're going to talk about the mark of the beast. The mark. Now, the mark of the beast has to do with buying and selling. That would be our economy. That would be our economy. Buying and selling. That's what the Bible says. The ones that have the mark on their forehead or in their hand. It's not a literal mark. It is a doctrine that's in our mind or up on our hand. And the word mark is the word charagma. Let's look over there at that so we'll have something to kind of go along with on this. Look over here in Revelation, the 13th chapter. I go from one place to the other. We're talking about the beast and the beast mark. Charagma is the word mark, and we'll get into that in a minute. But look over here, Revelation, the 13th chapter, and we see two beasts. We see the beast that we think of as the beast in verses 1 and 2. I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea. We've already said that the sea is the bottomless pit, and that is, here's Turkey, and down here is Israel, and you're going over to Egypt, and you go on out to and here is, here's this land bridge that goes from Turkey over here to Greece, and it goes kind of like this, and then down here into the Peloponnesus, and then back up to Greece, and then you get over here to Italy, and you're in the boot of Italy. Oops, didn't put the toe on there. In the boot of Italy, and then Roma's up here, and this is Africa down here, and here's Egypt, down here Egypt, and here's Israel here. This is the Mediterranean Sea. This is the sea where the beast rises up from. And the reason it rises up from the sea is the beast was Babylon, Persia, Greece, and Rome. And I'm going to come back and talk about that more, but it was the Babylonian lion, the Persian bear, the Grecian leopard, and the beast with iron teeth that devoured these other three here. And the beast had its borders upon, here's Turkey, Israel. Here is Lebanon, or ancient Tyre and Sidon, and down here is, this over here would be what we call Jordan, and it's in the ancient world it was divided into the land of Ammon, and the land of Moab. And Moab and Ammon were the two sons of Lot, with his incestuous situation with his daughters. Ammon, or Ben-Ami was the youngest, and Moab was the oldest. And this is southern Jordan and northern Jordan. And then it's Egypt down here and Ethiopia down here. And then you've got Babylon over here, and Persia over here. Babylon here, this is what we call Iraq. And Persia is what we call Iran. from Iran all the way over to Afghanistan and Pakistan and Turkestan and all these stands over here. You got a bunch of countries with stand on the end of them. All the way to India, that was Persia. So the Persian Empire, we know that Babylon attacked Israel, carried them to captivity. Then Persia attacks Babylon, marches down the riverbed, diverts it out into the Arabian desert, and Cyrus comes in and conquers Babylon. And then Persia is conquered by Alexander the Great, who was a Macedonia. When Paul was over here at Troas, he heard the Macedonian call, come over and help us, and this is Philippi and Thessalonica's up here. Well, and this is Greece. Well, that's a bad deal of Greece there. You got the Peloponnesus, which is down here on the end. There's a land bridge there. And then the Peloponnesus here, and you got Corinth here, and you got Athens up here. And this is Greece. So when Persia overthrows, Persia overthrows Babylon. Then Alexander the Great rises up with the great Grecian Empire, and that's the leopard over there in Daniel 7. And he attacks Persia and overcomes. I mean, Persia has its capital here in Babylon. And Alexander the Great loves Babylon, the great hanging garden. So he keeps his capital in Babylon also. So Persia's capital is there, and their capital is there. And then the great beast with iron teeth, Rome, here's the boot of Italy. That's a bad boot. But anyway, he overthrows the Alexander the Great's empire. Alexander dies. Some say he died of malaria. Some say he was assassinated. We don't know exactly which. Probably one of his generals. And 4 generals, Lysachemus, Cassander, and Seleucus and Ptolemy, take over his kingdom, and they are subjugated or put under the rule of the Roman Empire when the Rome overtakes Greece and everything else, and it is the beast with iron teeth. And all of these beasts have their borders of the beast world empire up on the Mediterranean Sea. So when the Bible says the beast rises up out of the sea, it rises up in the sense all of the borders of the beast world system is on the sea. That's what it's talking about. So it's on the Mediterranean Sea. It rises up out of the pit, or the bottomless pit, Abusos. And this is what it's talking about. It rises up out of the Abusos, or it comes from Bathos. Bottomless pit comes from Bathos, placing the alpha privative in front of Bathos. It means, Bathos means a place of great intellectual depth and knowledge. And when you place the alpha, the first letter of the Greek alphabet, in front of a word, it negates the word, gives an opposite meaning. It means a place of no knowledge. Now here's what it's talking about. It's talking about, here's Israel. Remember, here's the eastern end of the Mediterranean, and here's Israel. The only people who had any truth from Adam until Christ was Israel. Everybody else up on the sea, with the borders and boundaries of the beast upon the sea, they had no knowledge of God. So it is a place of no knowledge. They had no knowledge of God. God forbid them from coming to truth until Acts 2, where he says, because Israel kept going after idols all the time they were a kingdom, from 1 Samuel to 2 Chronicles, God says, because you've done this, you kept going after idols, I'm going to send 3 judgments. I'm going to send the sword, that is their enemies against them to destroy them. I'm going to send the famine, and the famine is usually the first judgment that he would send, and he said, I'm going to send the famine, and famine has to do with buying and selling. Now, you can talk about each one of these judgments separately. The sword is where there will be wars against Israel and rumors of wars. And then you've got the sword, the famine, and then you have the pestilence. That was the three judgments God sent over and over for 500 years while they were a nation. And then he says, finally, I will send the beast against Israel, which is this little nation on the eastern end of the Mediterranean. I'll send this world beast system to come in there and destroy you and carry you off to Babylon. And then Persia will overthrow that, and you'll be under the rule of Persia. Persia will give decrees for you to go back and rebuild your temple and your city, but most of you won't go. And then you'll be overthrown by Alexander the Great, and then the Roman Empire will overthrow Israel, and Rome, the beast of Rome, will be ruling in the New Testament when Jesus comes on the scene. And people say, well, the God of the Old Testament is a cruel God. Well, hey, in the New Testament, Rome is ruling. And that's the beast, and they're slaughtering Christians by the hundreds of thousands. That's a picture of them over there on that wall where they're being fed to the lions. They were fed to the gladiators. So when you're talking about a place of no knowledge, you're talking about all the rest of the world had no knowledge of God, only Israel right there. And we, the church, have a knowledge of God because God has revealed himself to us, and the rest of the world does not have any knowledge of God. Now that's what the beast is. That's what it's talking about. Now we're talking about a mark of the beast. If there has been a beast here, and there has been since the beginning, the Bible says that the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field. The beast was a world-ruling system. Can you see that? It's a world-ruling system. We're going to talk about one of these judgments. God had 4 judgments. He had the sword, the famine, the pestilence. And what's amazing, there's going to be a leader of the world system at the end of time, and he is going to say that he has answers that have no answer. Now, whenever you look at, let me show you something here. When you look over here in 2 Chronicles, the 36th chapter, 2 Chronicles 36, this is where Israel is carried away into captivity by the beast, by Babylon, in the 36th chapter of 2 Chronicles. 2 Chronicles 36. Verse 15. This is where Nebuchadnezzar is coming in to carry Israel away. They were a nation for 500 years, under kings, and somewhere in the neighborhood of 300 years, 275 to 300 years. It depends on who you believe the last judge of Israel was. I believe it was Samuel. So they're under judges for this long, and in judges they're going after Baal and Grove, and God keeps having the land cleaned up. Then when they get under kings, in 1 Samuel, the 8th chapter, when Saul is appointed their first king, when they get under kings there, they begin to get apostate and away from God, particularly in 1 Kings, when Solomon he marries 700 wives and 300 concubines, and they end up being pagans, and he starts building temples for their gods, Shemash and Molech, and etc. And this is the same system that was brought in the church and renamed Christ Mass. Christ Mass. Or Christmas, what we would call it. It's paganism. Now, I hate Christmas. I hate Christmas. It don't have anything to do with Jesus. I had a t-shirt on, and it said "Bah Humbug" on the front of it. Walked into the grocery store the other day, and a fellow, old guy about 67, 68, said, "Hey, I like your shirt." I said, "Well, I hate Christmas. It has nothing to do with Jesus. All of America is partying and stuffing and glutting themselves all year long, and then they overdo it at Christmas time. I want stuff and things and cars and houses, and give me that new shirt and that sweater and that tie, and I want a diamond ring, and give me. That's what Christmas is about. It's all about getting gifts. It has nothing to do with Jesus. It was pagan in its origin. It has nothing to do with the Lord. I don't do that, and I hate the thing. People say, aren't you going to take a day off of the year to celebrate Jesus' birthday? No. I celebrate Jesus every day. I witness to people every day down at Kmart, down at Walmart, down at the grocery store, at my doctor's. I preach to them. I don't have time to take a day off for Jesus. I'm too busy serving him every day. I don't even understand that kind of thinking. Aren't you going to take a day, one day out of 365 for Jesus? Live 364 for yourself. That's what they mean. No, I'm not going to do that. Well, Israel was carried away because of all this system, Baal, Grove, Shemash, Molech. That's why they were carried away by the beast, by that beast, because they were acting like they had no knowledge of God, and the Bible says, my people are destroyed there in Hosea for a lack of knowledge. They knew the truth, but they wouldn't do the truth. So he had them carried away by the beast. And that's what we're talking about, is this beast world system. He had 4 judgments. Look here. I want you to notice something. Notice words that have the same meaning. And he says in verse 15, the Lord God of their fathers sent them by his messengers, rising up betimes and sending, because he had compassion on his people. He kept sending his prophets to Israel and telling the prophets to preach to Israel and tell them to repent. Jeremiah preached for 40 years. Isaiah preached for 50 years, saying, repent, judgment's going to come. And on his dwelling place. But they mocked the messengers of God. Israel mocked God's prophets. They even killed Isaiah, put him in a log and cut him in half. They wanted to kill Jeremiah. They wanted to kill Hosea. They wanted to kill Joel. They wanted to kill Amos. And they killed many of them because they preached the truth, and they'll kill me one day if they stop this thing if this thing comes to an end. But they mocked the messengers of God and despised his words and misused his prophets until the wrath of the Lord arose against his people Israel till there was no remedy. The word remedy is the word marpe. No remedy for what? For their destruction, for Israel's destruction by the sword, famine, pestilence, and the beast. I want to kind of set this thing up mathematically so you'll see this. That's the word marpe. It means no remedy. Israel will have no remedy. And they were scattered for 2,600 years until Zionism began in 1896 by a man named Theodore Herzl. And when Theodore Herzl started Zionism, they started a fund all over the world for all Jews to take up a offering so they could buy some land and call it Israel. Well, they could not foresee that in 1917, at the end of World War I, except it wasn't called World War I back then. Why? Because we didn't have a II yet. It was called the Great War. It's called the Great War. Until the end of what we call World War I. And at the end of World War I, General Allenby of the British forces marched in, declared peace in Jerusalem for the first time, at least in 400 years while they were under the rule of the Ottoman Turks, and especially for 2,600 years since they had been a nation in 586 BC and they were carried off captive. I don't know how I got on that. Now, therefore he brought up on them the king of the Chaldees, who slew their young men with the sword in the house of their sanctuary, and had no compassion upon young man or maiden, old man or him that stooped for age. He gave them all into the hand of Nebuchadnezzar. Gave Israel, southern Judah. Northern Israel has already been carried away captive. And all the vessels of the house of God, great and small, the treasures of the house of the Lord, and the treasures of the king and of his princes, all these he brought to Babylon. And they burnt the house of God, and brake down the wall of Jerusalem, and burnt all the places thereof with fire, and destroyed all the goodly vessels thereof. And them that had escaped from the sword carried he away to Babylon. Those they didn't kill, they carried off to Babylon, where they were servants to him and his sons until the reign of the king of Persia. And that's all of a sudden you jump from 586 BC until 539. 539 BC is when, you remember over there, the Persians or the Iranians. Iran overthrows Babylon over here on the Euphrates River. I just put that up on the board. They come over here and overthrow Babylon. By the Persian king Cyrus marches down the riverbed. He diverts the river out here and goes in and conquers Babylon. Well, that happened in 539. Now, And that's what happens right here. He says, and his sons until the reign of the king of Persia, to fulfill the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah, until the land had enjoyed her Sabbaths. For as long as she lay desolate, she kept Sabbath to fulfill 70 years. And we know what that's about. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They had a sabbatical year. Every 7 years they had to let the land lie fallow. They couldn't plant. They couldn't reap. They couldn't do anything. That was a year of the land had to rest. We rotate crops. What we do, if a man owns all this land, all these tracts of land, he can't plant them all every year. He's got to plant certain ones one year, and then certain ones the next year, and then certain ones the year after. Because if he plants them every year without putting some kind of fertilizer in there or calling his farm agent out there and finding out what he needs to put in the land, you'll burn the land up, you'll pull all the nutrients out, and you won't be able to grow anything. I've done that with gardens. Has anybody ever done that besides me? You plant a garden, you plant a garden, you plant a garden, and you wonder why about the 7th year nothing will come up. You burn the land up. That's what Israel did for 500 years. They had 70 sets of these sabbatical years where they had to let the land lie fallow. They said, we can't do that. You got to remember they had a crop. They reaped a crop in the spring and one in the fall. They planted a crop in the fall. They planted the crops that would come up the next year. So they couldn't reap the crop they had planted the previous fall, and they had no crop. They couldn't plant in the 7th year. They couldn't plant in the fall, so they missed the fall of the 6th year, spring and fall of the 7th year, and the spring of the 8th year. So they actually had a 2-year period out of 7 years. They had no food except what was growing of itself out there in the fields. God says, I'll give you more in your storehouses than you can possibly use. And they said, we are not going to do that. That's one of the main reasons Israel went after these other gods, these other fertility gods. But Jehovah God says, I'll be your fertility God. I'll fill up your basket, your store, your wombs. And you'll win. You'll be winners. All you have to do is serve me and do what I say. Otherwise, I'll bring the sword, the famine, the pestilence, and then the beast. Over there in the 14th chapter of Ezekiel, God calls these my 4 sore judgments. That's what he calls them. And I'm not going to go there right now. He calls them, and he calls the beast the noisome beast. It doesn't mean noisy. The word is raw. It's the same word as evil, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Now, a lion is not evil. A lion eats you because you're on this food chain. A leopard is not evil. You're also on his food chain. You're definitely on a bear's food chain. That's Persia. So they're not evil. What's evil is Babylon, Persia, Greece, and Rome. Now, we said that Marpe, he says there'll be no remedy with the judgments of God, the sword, the famine, the pestilence, and the beast. Look over here in Luke 21. Luke 21. This is talking about Israel being scattered all over the earth because of their apostasy over there. Luke 21. And Luke 21 is one of my favorite chapters on prophecy in all the Bible. If I'm just going to preach on prophecy, when I was traveling as a young preacher back in the 60s, I was going to preach on prophecy. This is where I went to, straight to this, right here. And he's talking about Israel in Luke 21. When ye shall see Jerusalem, verse 20, compassed with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is nigh. How long was Jerusalem compassed with armies? From 586, when Babylon came in, all the way till the 6-day war, June 5th through June 10th. Before June 5th, June 10th, when Israel was freed in 1917 by General Allenby, then 1920, the Balfour Declaration was issued, and that was a declaration that Israel would be a part of the British Commonwealth for a period of time, and that Balfour Declaration expired May 14th, 1948. And that's the day they declared Israel a nation for the first time in 2,500 years. People will say, wasn't Israel a nation while Jesus was here? No. Only southern Judah was back from the captivity. Northern Israel was the 10 lost tribes, and I'm not going to go into that right now. They never came back from the captivity. Only southern Judah. Northern Israel was led by Ephraim, the second-born son. He had the inheritance of Israel according to the 48th chapter of Genesis. So he has the inheritance, and they're not back from the captivity during the days of Jesus. So we're talking about that how long was Israel encamped by armies? From 586? Were they encamped by armies during Jesus' day? The Roman legions were everywhere. They had all these forts and had these men that were stationed there. Pilate was a representative of Rome. He was just the governor there. And they were watching over Israel because Israel gave them so much trouble. So they were not a nation when Jesus was here. Remember, the Pharisees would come and say, when are you going to restore the kingdom? The apostles say, when are you going to restore the kingdom? It wasn't here. So it says, when you see Jerusalem campused with armies, how long was that? That was 2,600 years until the Six-Day War, when they threw the Jordanians out in that Six-Day War of 67. You think all this doesn't have anything to do? People will say to me, they'll say, I'll be talking to somebody out in public, and they'll say, well, people have always said that the end is near. And I say to them, there's things that's happened in the last 50 years that had not ever happened before. Particularly, Israel becoming a nation again for the first time in 2,600 years. That's in our lifetime. Then he says, then let them which are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let them when? During the 2,600 year period. And let them which are in the midst of it depart out. Get out of Jerusalem. Let not them that are in the countries around Israel go into Israel. This is going to be a bloodbath for 2,600 years. For these be the days of God's revenge. You could put God's revenge. Vengeance, God's vengeance upon Israel, because they kept going after these idol gods. That all things which are written may be fulfilled. But woe to them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. If you have a baby, and you're having to drag him around while you're trying to run from persecution, for there shall be great distress in the land and wrath upon this people Israel. Look over here in Hosea, the 13th chapter. Here's what God says would happen to the women with child. Hosea, the 13th chapter. Hosea, Joel, Amos, right after Daniel. Hosea, 13th chapter. This is Hosea is prophesying against Ephraim, northern Israel, and he's telling them what God would do to them. Look at verse 15, chapter 13. Though he be fruitful among his brethren, an east wind shall come. What is the east wind? The Assyrians are going to come. They came from the east. The Babylonians came from the east to carry southern Judah away. Assyria was the same thing as northern Babylon, or up there between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea. That was Assyria. And it was the Assyrians that came, and they were an east wind that carried northern Israel away, coming from up here, carried northern Israel away over into captivity. That was in 722 BC. Then he says, but woe to them that are, I was going to give you this over here in Hosea. An east wind shall come, the wind of the Lord shall come up from the wilderness, that's Assyria, and his spring shall become dry, and his fountain shall be dried up, and he shall spoil the treasure of all pleasant vessels. Samaria, which is northern Israel, shall become desolate at the hands of the Assyrian armies. For she hath rebelled against her God. The sword, the famine, the pestilence, the beast is because people rebel against God, and America's rebelling against God. They don't believe His word. They shall fall by the sword. Their infants shall be dashed in pieces, and the women with child in their bellies shall be ripped out of them. God said, you had no pity for me. I have none for you. People say God wouldn't do that. He says, I certainly will. Now, back to 24th verse of the 23rd verse of the 21st chapter of Luke. Woe unto them that are with child, and them that give suck in those days, for there shall be great distress in the land, and wrath upon this people Israel. And it went on for 2,600 years. And they, the Jews, Israel, shall fall by the edge of the sword, and shall be led away captive into all nations by the beast world system. You can put that in there. Because that's what led them away, didn't they? Didn't God say, remember what God prophesied in Deuteronomy? Let's just look at it real quick. Deuteronomy 28. He gives you all the things that He says He's going to do to Israel if they forsake Him and go after these idol gods, or go after this Christ mass system that we call Christmas. 28th chapter, He says, if you're not obedient to me and you don't hearken unto my voice, in verse 15, I'll curse you in the city. Your field will be cursed. Your basket will be cursed. Your fruit of your body will be cursed. Your storehouses will be cursed. The flocks of your sheep will be cursed. There'll be vanity. There'll be cursing and vexation and rebuke in verse 20. Down here in verse 21, the Lord shall make pestilence. That's one of the judgments of God, to cleave unto thee. The Lord shall smite thee with consumption in verse 22, with fever, with inflammation, with extreme burning, with sword, with blasting, with mildew. And they that pursue thee until you perish. They'll come after you, Israel. That's the sword. Then He says, and thy heaven that is over thy head shall be brass. There won't be any rain. That's when Elijah came and stood in front of Ahab and said, no rain for 3.5 years. I'm out of here. Can you imagine no rain for 3.5 years in America? People are going to be dying by the millions. They were dying all over Israel. Jezebel said, I'll find him and I'll kill that man. By this time tomorrow, and Elijah started running for his life. Now that's Christianity. You really believe in Christianity? It's not this easy gospel they preach in these churches. Tell the truth and they'll want to kill you like they did Elijah. Over thy head shall be brass, and the earth that is under thee shall be iron, and you won't have any crops, and that will be the economy. Want it? And the Lord shall make the rain of thy land powder. That is the best rain you'll get, and dust from heaven until it come down upon thee, until thou be destroyed. The Lord shall cause thee to be smitten before thine enemies. Thou shalt go against your enemy one way, and you'll flee 7 ways before them, and you shall be removed into all the kingdoms of the earth by the beast. Put that in there. Just write that in there. By the beast. And does God cause that to happen? And notice, this is in Deuteronomy before they go in to possess the land. He's telling them what He's going to do, not what He might do. He tells them all through here what's going to happen to them because He's got it already planned out. Now back over here to Luke 21. He did just that. He scattered them. And they, the Jews, verse 24, shall fall by the edge of the sword and be led away captive into all nations, and Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the time of the Gentile rule over Jerusalem is finished. And there shall be signs in the sun and the moon and the stars, and of the earth distress of nations with perplexity. Aporia. That belongs in this. We're going to put this up here. Goes right under Marpe. No way out. That's the word aporia. Marpe, no cure. They're the same thing. That's what he says, till there's no cure. Till there's no way out. And there's not. There's no way out of this for the world. These guys say they're going to fix this. They're not going to fix this. This is the judgment of God coming on the earth because men do not believe God. The churches are not preaching truth. Preachers don't preach truth. Men's hearts failing them for fear, for looking after the things that are coming on the earth. The sea and the waves roaring, men's hearts failing them for fear. The sea and the waves are roaring like never before. Now, so we've got two words here. Marpe, aporia. And they mean the same thing. Over in the Old Testament, 2 Chronicles 36. And over here in New Testament, Luke 21. And God says there's no way out, but there's going to be a man come along, and he is going to be called not so much Antichrist. He will be Antichrist, but Antichrist is anyone who denies Christ or contradicts the Word of God. This man's title is Man of Sin. Man of Sin. And he's going to be, as we said last week, he's going to be very, very popular with the world. He's going to gain the kingdom. We talked about Antiochus Epiphanes. Antiochus Epiphanes last week. Here's the picture of the Old Testament picture of the man of sin, where he causes the sacrifice and the oblation to cease in the temple of God. And that's not in a literal temple. We're the temple of God. The sacrifice is our daily sacrifice, our daily cross, and the oblation is the bread offering. The bread is the Word of God. They will come to a place where they say, we forbid you're reading this and preaching what you're preaching because you're disturbing things out here in the American public. You can preach a Jesus, but he's going to have to be another Jesus that's a real nice Jesus and makes everybody get along. And that's not the Jesus of the Bible. So we talked about Antiochus Epiphanes, and he is the very picture of the man of sin. Another name for him is King of Fierce Countenance. And our problem, the thing that there's no cure to, is the sword, the famine. We're talking about famine this morning. Famine, pestilence, and beast. Famine is going to be economy. That's buying and selling. Our problem in the world is money right now, isn't it? I mean, Greece is going down. America is going down the tubes. You've heard that we owe $14.5 trillion. In the last couple of months, it's grown to $16.5 trillion. I've been doing some research on the internet, on the national debt. We have the actual debt, and we have the current debt. The current debt is around $16 trillion. The national debt is so high. Professor Lawrence, he is at Boston University. He says, his name is Lawrence Kotlikoff, Kotlikoff. He is an economics professor. He says the Republicans and the Democrats are not telling the American public the truth. He says we're being kept totally in the dark. He says we actually owe from 202 to $222 trillion in commitments that we have made. He says we are being lied to right straight through. He says the politicians will not tell the truth. And he is an economics authority. He knows more than probably anybody up there in Washington knows. But they're not going to elect somebody like him that can tell us the truth and warn. They're afraid they're going to cause some national panic.
Well, this, days.
Huh?
That's days, trillion days, it looks like.
What?
Trillion days.
That's what it kind of looks like.
Dollars. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm thinking too much. Let me read something to you. Then I'm going to show you what they say is going to happen. Now, some of this, the gross domestic product, GDP, that you hear Obama talk about, the gross domestic product is the total amount of services as well as product as we are putting out and what we're bringing in every year. That's the GDP. Now let me read some of this to you. Have you heard either candidate, talking about Obama or Romney, discussing the truth in this article? Math is hard, but when you use it correctly, it can reveal some ugly truths. Kotlikoff is a truth teller. The drones in government don't follow the same accounting concepts as the real world. When you put government fake accounting into real numbers, you realize that the government isn't running annual deficits of 1.3 trillion per year. They're talking about a deficit of 1.3 trillion per year, but a deficit of 11 trillion per year. We're running a deficit. That's the amount we got to borrow. I'm trying to get to the point. The point I'm trying to get at is we have to, in order to come up to the end of time, we've got to have an economics problem. The United States has to go down in order to have a world beast system. You cannot have an independent system sitting over here while you got a beast ruling the rest of the world. If it's a beast, it's going to rule all the world. We have to go down. If we go down, and when we go down, not if we go down, when we go down, we'll go under the nearest form of government, either the United Nations or the United Nations coupled with the European Economic Community and all the rest of these world organizations, or Bilderbergs, or Trilateral Commission, etc. Every year, the present value of unfunded obligations made by our politicians goes up because the promises are 1 year closer to being honored. The true present value of future obligations that we've already made is $222 trillion. This is $700,000 per person in America. This is $1.9 million per household. Where are you going to get your $1.9 million? Huh? And people say, well, the government can pay it. Where do you think the government gets their money? They get it by taxing you. We are the government's bank. You not know that? Well, you think they just got a money tree out there? They get it from us. This is what you currently owe. Do you feel better? I like that. But see, this is encouragement to me because I know that Jesus is going to come back. This is a part of the no answer, no cure, no way out. People ask me, what's we going to do? What's going to happen? Nothing. We're going to live till Jesus comes or till they put us in jail. Both candidates are running on platforms of extending tax cuts and cutting spending or entitlements. Entitlements is welfare and Medicare and Medicaid and all the things that we're entitled to. The present value of future obligations will be $260 trillion in 4 years. We're not talking about 14, 15, 16 trillion. We're talking about in the hundreds of trillions now. And that is without recession or new war in the Middle East. The fact is that $222 trillion will not be honored because it can't be. It's impossible to pay our commitments. The article makes that clear. This entire fraud of promises, lies, and pretending will come crashing down and leave this country in smoldering ruins. This is by a Boston College authority on economics, Dr. Lawrence Kotlikoff. There is no courage to face the truth. What happens when the lies are revealed is anyone's guess. Fourth turnings are always interesting. Dr. Kotlikoff says, Republicans and Democrats spent last summer battling how best to save $2.1 trillion over the next decade. They are spending this summer battling how best not to save $2.1 trillion over the next decade. In the course of the year, the U.S. government's fiscal gap, the true measure of the nation's indebtedness, rose. You think that Obama gave away $1 trillion to help stimulate the economy? Our our indebtedness rose 11 trillion in the last year. The physical gap is present value difference between projected future spending and revenue. Then he goes into, he says, alternative physical scenario, the gap by reckoning stood at 175 trillion by 2009 when the CBO began reporting the AFS annually. The gap was 184 trillion. In 2010 it was 202 trillion, followed by 211 trillion in 2011 and 222 trillion in 2012. How's that for increasing? Just jumping trillions every year. We don't have any way out of this, folks.
$1 trillion is $1 million dollars.
Yeah.
1 million million.
That's right. It's $1 million. That's right. And he says the answer for the U.S. isn't pretty. Closing the gap using taxes requires an immediate and permanent 64% increase in all federal taxes. 64% increase in all federal taxes. Now, who in the world's going to pay that? And who's going to vote for it? With those guys running Congress and Senate and House of Representatives, how are they going to get that? You're not going to get that past them. They're rich. They're not going to pay for that. 64% increase. What the heck? Why not just go ahead and give them all your paycheck, huh? Let me read something else on one of these other papers. And what's so funny is you can go online and look all this up. Just Google national debt, or can we pay our national debt? This is another article by Nasworth. The national debt is at 14.5 trillion. He's not up to date. He doesn't know that it's come up recently to 16 trillion. Though the national debt is the United States' current outstanding debt obligation, though the current debt is quite high, discussion of the current debt avoids the real issue that Standard & Poor's attempted to raise with the downgrade of the nation's credit rating. The current level of debt is large. The levels of future debt are where the real problem lies. That's like I've said. Well, we'll kind of keep putting this off and let our kids take care of that when they're grown. That's not our problem. The U.S. government has made promises that it will be unable to keep under current policies. The two biggest drivers of the nation's unfunded liabilities are Social Security and Medicare. Welcome to the world of reality. They say they're going to take that away. You know that's in the wind, don't you? We're headed towards something. I'm saying this so I can help warn you about what's going to happen. I don't believe in going out, right now I don't believe in going out and buying new houses and new cars. We're headed down. And it might be this next year. He goes into current unfunded, these are unfunded liabilities, things that we owe that we can't pay and there's no backing on it. Current unfunded liabilities for Social Security. For all us old folks, the amount the program is projected to cost minus the projected amount that will be raised through the Social Security payroll tax at current levels is about 15 trillion that we can't pay. Just in Social Security. Commitments. Current unfunded liabilities for Medicare. I don't know how in the world some people are living. Do you know people are dying in Middle Tennessee because they can't get their medication? Because they have no insurance? And Obamacare is not going to work. I mean, making everybody, making all the companies that have so many full-time employees, making them buy them the full-time employees' insurance, all they do is cut all their full-time employees back to part-time. Then they take their insurance away. Nothing. There is no answer. That's the point. Current unfunded liabilities for Medicare are much higher. The amount the program is projected to cost minus the projected amount that will be raised through Medicare payroll tax at current levels, what they're projecting is 80 trillion for Medicare. It's unbelievable. Medicare's prescription drug benefit adds another 20 trillion in unfunded liabilities. Just the just the prescription drugs drives the Medicare unfunded liabilities to $100 trillion just for Medicare. You say, Jim, are you saying this to be just to scare us? Yeah. I hope it'll scare you into serving God, because there's not going to be answer till Jesus comes. So what is the real debt? Or he says, speaks of the unfunded, let me see here. What is the real debt? What is the amount that the U.S. government has promised to pay minus the amount it is expected to collect in taxes? Lawrence Kotlikoff, professor of economics at Boston University, estimates that number at $211 trillion, and he's raised it to $222 trillion since he puts this article out. That's the physical gap. That's our true indebtedness, Kotlikoff told NPR. To deal with the true debt, therefore, Congress must deal with the two biggest drivers of the true debt, Medicare and Social Security. And if they take that away, guess who's going to starve to death? The old people in the American public. And if you worked for a company like Gerald did, and you got a decent income monthly retirement, and it goes bankrupt, that's going too. He says reforming these programs has proven difficult because the beneficiaries of these programs, the elderly, represent a large voting bloc, and they vote in high numbers. On the other hand, those who have most to lose because of the unfunded liabilities, the young, do not vote in high numbers. Many of these program beneficiaries believe, for instance, that they are only getting out of the program what they put in it. And I've always known this. In the form of payroll taxes while they were working. That is not true. Most beneficiaries will get much more out of Social Security and Medicare than they ever put into them in their lifetimes. So that's breaking us. Well, what's the answer? Well, there's not any answer. Kotlikoff says the U.S. is bankrupt and don't even know it. That's a picture of him right there. He says we're already bankrupt and we don't even know it. Bloomberg video. Dr. Kotlikoff, economics professor at Boston University, discusses the national debt and unfunded liabilities. Kotlikoff says the real national debt, this is what he said in 2010, was $202 trillion. That's the real national debt. Conquer the official deficit numbers for July of 2010. The deficit numbers was $165 billion in July of 2010. With the numbers for all of 2002 were $165 billion, cover the deficit of the entire fiscal year. What used to be the entire fiscal year is now 1 month of deficit. Based on the CBO's data, I calculate a fiscal gap of $202 trillion, which is more than 15 times the official debt. And I got more of this. There is a national debt clock on the internet. You can go in there and look at it. And you can watch that thing spin. Just it's running up $1 million a minute. Just going. If any of you looked at the national debt clock, it's very scary how fast it's moving.
And that's not even Europe.
He says the national debt has continued to increase, an average of $3.88 billion per day since September 28, 2007. $3.88 billion per day is how fast it's been growing. I'll do some more of this later. I'm going to get back to the message. I brought this out so I can show you there is no answer for what the Bible says, but there's a man going to stand up and say he has the answers to these, what the Bible calls, what has been translated, puzzling question, or dark sentences. Actually, it says dark sentences. What is the puzzling questions? The sword, the famine, the pestilence, the beast. There's a man going to rise up and say, I've got the answer to dark sentences. And he's going to be the man of sin. And let's look at him over here in the 8th chapter of Daniel. 8th chapter of Daniel. Now I hope that'll scare you to serve God. Not scare you to do something else, but to serve God. I look forward to the end. You say, Jim, you sound like you enjoy this. I certainly do. I am so sick and tired of a world that claims to believe God and they do not. If you think God's judgment is not going to come on this world, it is, and it's coming, and it's on the way, and it's here. We're going to wake up one morning and they're going to say the stock market crashed, the stock market in Japan crashed, the EEC in Europe has gone down, and there's going to be desperation in America. And our only hope is our faith in Jesus Christ and believing God and believing we have a hope. We have a blessed hope, don't we? We're looking for the blessed hope and the glorious appearing of the great God and our Savior, Jesus Christ. And that will solve everything. He'll send most of those people to hell. That'll fix it, won't it? They want to reduce the population of the world. Well, we're going to do that when Jesus comes back. All right. Now look over here in Daniel. Here's the man that says he's going to fix the aporia, no way out, distress of nations with perplexity. He's going to, when Israel came in, there was no remedy. God says, I've got the remedy, but a man of sin is going to come along, and he's called the king of fierce countenance. Look over here in Daniel, 8th chapter. We see the beast rising up out of the sea in the 7th chapter. Whenever you're looking in Scripture, you have to look at the context and what they're talking about. In the 7th chapter, the beast is represented as a lion, a leopard, and a bear, and the beast with iron teeth. That's Babylon, Persia, Greece, and Rome. That's what it is. Now, then in the 8th chapter, we see, let's read some of 8. In the 3rd year of the reign of the king of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, a vision appeared unto me, Daniel, even unto me, Daniel, after that which appeared unto me at first. And I saw in a vision, and it came to pass, when I saw that I was at Shushan in the palace, which is in the province of Elam, I saw in a vision, and I was by the river Ulai. Then I lifted up mine eyes and saw, and behold, there stood before the river a ram which had 2 horns. This is another picture of Persia being represented here. Belshazzar is the king of Babylon, and Belshazzar is going to be overthrown. He's the king when Cyrus marches down the riverbed and finds him that night parting with the vessels of the house of the Lord in the 5th chapter of Daniel. And he says, you're weighed in the balance and found wanting, and Cyrus kills him that night. A ram with 2 horns. What are the 2 horns? Well, it'll tell you. And the 2 horns were high, but one was higher than the other, and the higher came up last. The Persian Empire was a dual empire, Persia and Medes. The Persian, this is Iran, Persia, Mede Empire. The Mede was a smaller empire, was a smaller part of the empire. It was a dual empire, and the large part was the Persians, and the small part were the Medes. The Longhorn would be the Persians. And I saw a ram pushing westward. Well, let me back up. And the 2 horns were, one was higher than the other, and the higher came up last. And I saw the ram pushing westward and northward and southward, so that no beast might stand before him. Remember, here's Persia over here. He pushes west to Babylon, and he pushes south down here to Israel, and he pushes north, the nations up here in the Assyrian area, and he pushes westward, and nothing can stand before the Persian ram here. It's also represented as a bear in the 7th chapter. Nothing stands before it. I saw him push westward and northward and southward, so that no beast, and the reason he's pushing these 3 directions and not east is because he's in the east. And that no beast might stand before him, neither was there any that could deliver out of his hand, but he did according to his will, and became great. And as I was considering, behold, an he-goat came from the west on the face of the whole earth. That's Alexander the Great coming from over here. Over here. Here's the Aegean Sea. Here's the Mediterranean Sea. Here's Turkey here. And he's coming from the east. That's what it's talking about here. That's the he-goat. And he touched not the ground. That meant he was moving fast like a leopard. And the goat had notable horn between his eyes. That was Alexander the Great. The Bible says that at the end of this chapter. And he came to the ram that had two horns, or to Persia, which I had seen standing before the river, and ran into him in the fury of his power. And Alexander the Great brings down Persia, brings down the ram. And I saw him come close unto the ram, and he was moved with bitterness, because he was coming back and retaliating for having been attacked by some of the ancestors of this Xerxes that he was attacking. So he's very bitter at what they had done to him, and they had attacked him many years before. And smote the ram, and brake his two horns, and there was no power in the ram to stand before him. No one could stand before Alexander the Great. He said, I never met a country I could not conquer. He was a bad dude. He was a military wizard. He was the best of the best. He was 32 years old when he died. He was a general rampaging across the continents at 25 and 26 years old, conquering everything. And he was a genius. His tactics are studied at West Point and all of these military schools. He did things that were just so uncommon, just so unorthodox in battle. Nobody knew how he could do it. One of the things he did, he would charge in, these people would charge into him, the Persians would charge in with their chariots. And Alexander the Great studied, he didn't study how he could stop them from charging in. They're going to charge in. He studied horses. So when they would come in, here's his line, and they would run at him with a chariot, if they'd have stood there, they would have suffered the brunt of all of the swords and so forth. But he studied horses, and he found out that if you'll open up a place here and stop, the horses will come in and stop. And they came in and stopped, and then they'd slaughter the driver and take his chariot and put it back here behind the lines. He would study things that nobody else would think of studying. Say, how can we get the horses to stop? If you put them in an enclosed area, they would stop. So that's the way he'd win. He had some strange things he would do. He did a thing where that he would attack the Persian line up here, and then he'd have his horses, before he attacked, he'd had them bear to the right and start trotting this way fast as they could, and right behind them were all these guys standing here with slings, and they would start throwing into these people. He'd get them right up close behind the horses, and he used these kind of crazy tactics that nobody thought of doing. They just thought of going in there and attacking the guy with the sword and trying to outdo him. Well, Alexander the Great, with his smaller armies, couldn't do that. So he had to figure out a way to whip the big ones, and he did. So they couldn't stand before him. Therefore, verse 8, therefore the he-goat waxed very great, and when it was strong, the great horn was broken, and for it came up four notable ones toward the four winds of heaven. The great horn was broken. That was Alexander the Great. When he died in 320, he died, some say of malaria, some say one of his generals may have killed him. I believe it's possibly Seleucus may have killed him, because he got the lion's share of the empire. And out of one of them came, when he says the great horn was broken, for it came up four notable ones. That's the four generals that took over his empire. This says the same thing over there in verse 6 of chapter 7. That this I beheld, and lo, another like a leopard, which was Alexander the Great, and his empire, Grecian empire, which had upon the back of it four wings of a fowl. The beast had also four heads, and dominion was given unto it. And the four heads of that beast was the four generals, Lysicamus, Cassander, Ptolemy. And the Ptolemies took over Egypt and Seleucus, and they took over the Syrian empire, the Syrian area up here, and all this area here. Now, let's go on down here. Let me read on real quick. I'm running out of time. And out of them came forth a little horn which waxed exceeding great toward the south and toward the east and toward the pleasant land. And it waxed great. This is Antiochus Epiphanes. He's the one that's going to cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. He was a Seleucian king. Came out of Seleucus' reign in Syria. You had Seleucus, and then you had several Antiochus. Antiochus the god, Antiochus Epiphanes, Antiochus the Great, and so forth. And it waxed great, even the host of heaven, and it cast down some of the host of the stars to the ground, and stamped upon them. Yea, he magnified himself even to the prince of the host, and by him the daily sacrifice was taken away. We talked about that with Antiochus last week in the 11th chapter of Daniel. Remember that? And the place of his sanctuary was cast down. Let's move on down here. Now we're talking about the beast system, aren't we? Look here in verse 20. The ram which thou sawest having two horns are the kings of Media and Persia. You thought I was smart, didn't you? All you had to do is read it. What you do is you read the end of the chapter first. And you say, I wasn't that smart. And the rough goat is the king of Greece, Alexander the Great. And the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king, Alexander. He was the first king. His father was Philip of Macedon, but his father wasn't king of the empire. You don't conquer an empire until you conquer the existing empire. So this is Alexander the Great. The rough goat is the king of Greece. And the great horn that is between his eyes is Alexander the Great, the first king. Now that being broken, whereas four stood up for it. Another mention of the four generals of Alexander the Great. Let me write them down again. Lysachamus, Cassander, Seleucus. He got the large share of Alexander's empire, and Ptolemy. And Ptolemy got Egypt, and Seleucus got all of this up here, Syria and what we call Lebanon and Israel, and all this. He got the big part of the empire. And that was Ptolemy. And the Ptolemies of Egypt became a title just like Caesar. And Seleucians became a title also, and they had Antiochus. They had several Antiochus. And Antiochus Epiphanes was the picture of the man of sin in the New Testament. That is going to have a mark of the beast. And he's going to claim to have the answers. And it says so right here. Look here. Now that being broken, verse 22, whereas four stood up, Alexander the Great dies, and his four generals stand up for him. Four kingdoms shall stand up out of the nation, but not in his power. Then all of a sudden we jump. From verse 22 to verse 23, you jump to the end of time, and the beast that will be there at the end of time, or the world system, or what if I said the new world order. Somebody's going to have to step forward and claim to have the answers for the sword, the famine, the pestilence, and it will be the beast world system led by the man of sin. And he's called the king of fierce countenance right here. In the latter time of their kingdom. In the latter time of whose kingdom? Greece, Persia, Rome. What will be the end time? What will be the end of the beast system? It will be the end of time, will it not? That's when it's talking about. In the latter time of their kingdom. It's one kingdom. It's a world beast ruling system. When the transgressors are come to the full. When God says, I've had all I'm going to put up with. A king of fierce countenance. And understanding dark sentences. The word fierce doesn't mean mean. It's a word that means strong or mighty. He's going to look like he is in charge, not unlike Obama. If it's not Obama, it's going to be somebody a lot like him, because the world was cheering for him when he got reelected. The world. I don't know if he's the man of sin. It's going to be somebody that's going to be close to what he is.
Bill Clinton can talk circles.
Well, he's getting old. In the latter time of their kingdom, when the transgressors are come to the full, a king of fierce countenance and understanding dark sentences. The word dark sentences is the word chidah, C-H-I-Y-D-A-H. Remember, C-H-I-Y-D-A-H. It means puzzling questions. What are the puzzling questions? The sword, the famine, the pestilence, and the beast will say, we've got the answer, and the leader of this will be the king of fierce countenance, or the man of sin. Looks like Kentucky Fried Chicken, doesn't it? Man of sin. King of fierce countenance, man of sin. And Kedah, this is going to be the answers where the Bible says there is no answer, there is no marpe, there is no aporia. The Bible says there is no answer, and he's going to say, I have the answers. I'll rise up and come up with the world order or the world system. And America has to go down before you can have a world. We're the most powerful nation in the world right now. But economy is going to keep you from being the most powerful nation. And we're going to go down. You say, Jim, that sounds awful negative. No, it's positive. It's positive because I'm looking forward to the Lord coming and getting me out of here. I am tired. If you can get old, you get tired. If you get a whole lot of this stuff going on in your head, you get sick of the world. I'm just tired of it. I just don't care anymore about what people think. I'm going to tell the truth, and I don't care who likes it or not.
Jim, one of the lexicon says that understanding dark sentences also translates as skill in subtlety and fraud.
Skill and well, that's what it says. Skill and subtlety and fraud. Fraud. Well, you go ahead and look at the next sentence. And his power shall be mighty, but not by his own power, and he shall destroy wonderfully, and shall prosper and practice, and shall destroy the mighty and the holy people of God, the church. That's who he's going to destroy. And through his policy, Sikel, intelligence, brilliance. Through his Sikel, through his intelligence, knowledge, sense of understanding the world situation. Through his policy, he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand. The word craft is the word mirmah, M-I-R-M-A-H. It means deception, fraud. He's going to cause a fraudulent, we already got fraud prospering in America, don't we? We're being defrauded of everything, and these guys don't care because they're making their money and they could care less about the American public. Do I believe politicians are there because they want to serve the American public? They're there for money and power. Don't you know that? You not know how much money there is in being a big-name politician? First of all, when you retire, you're there like Howard Baker was for 100 years. And you're leader of the House, and all he had to do, he had a booking agent that would book him in colleges. He'd get $50,000 a night just to speak. He could take all the nights all year long he wanted. And when you get back home to your constituents that voted for you back in Tennessee or back in Texas or wherever you're from, everybody in the area, you have the biggest name in the state, and everybody wants your name on some development, and all you have to do is sign. You don't have to sign any obligation. Just put your name on it, and they'll pump it and build it to the high heavens. You can sit back and make millions. That's why Mr. Kolikoff said they need to put limits on these congressional people. They need to put limits on the senators instead of letting them stay there for 30 years where they get rich and super powerful. So you can only be there 4 years. That's it. And then you're on. That's what it should be. But they are so powerful. Do you think they're going to vote? They're coming up and Obama says he's going to have everybody taxed at $250,000 and over. Who passes that law? The senators. How much do they make? A lot more than that. So you think they're going to vote to tax themselves? They're like the IRS. They answer to nobody. Anything they don't like, they veto it. And through his policy also he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand, and he shall magnify himself in his heart, and by peace shall destroy many. By peace. We're going to have peace. When they say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them that travails upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. We're looking toward the end of all things, folks. If this is not the end, Israel's been scattered all over the world, and they'll be led away captive in all nations until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled, and this generation will not pass away till all is fulfilled. We're living in it. I don't see how the world can continue. I do not see how America can continue much longer. We are on the verge. We should be bankrupted already. But you know what keeps us from bankrupting? These power heads in the world, these talking heads on TV, they have such a control over the American public that when they come on TV, they sow all this false propaganda and make you feel like you're okay. And you're not. Well, you are in Christ. You're okay. And by peace shall destroy many. He shall also stand up against the prince of princes. He's going to stand up against Jesus. How does he do that? He's going to attack Christ. How do you attack a man? You attack his wife, the church. That's what's going to happen. And he is also Gog, and we see Gog attacking the heavenly Jerusalem over there in Revelation 20. Heavenly Jerusalem is not the literal Jerusalem over there. That Jerusalem was called Sodom and Egypt in the 11th chapter of Revelation. But he shall be broken without hand, with no strength. He's going to be broken to nothing. Now let's go over here to Revelation, the 13th chapter. That's where I was going in earlier, wasn't it? How much time do I have? 15. I hope this is a sobering message to you. It sobers me. I get very depressed at seeing what's going on in the world. I'm teaching on Sunday night. Some of you are missing a lot if you don't listen to those Sunday night messages. I've been on the doctrine of the devil daimonion, meaning to distribute fortunes. Distribute fortunes, I think that's economy, isn't it? Huh? It all ties together. That's famine. If you can't have an economy, you're into famine. That's the judgment of God. Look over here in Revelation 13. We see two beasts. We see the beast, the lion, the bear, and the leopard, and it is not a him, it's an it. We've already said that. And I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, or the Mediterranean Sea, and now the sea is all over the world. The whole idea of the sea was it was a place of no knowledge of God, because God only gave his knowledge to the church, to his elect, his predestinated family. Now he's only given his knowledge to the predestinated elect all over the world. Therefore the sea is all over the world. Isn't it? The earth shall be full of his knowledge and glory as waters that cover the sea. Now, we see the beast. In verse 2, the beast which I saw was like a leopard. Greece, Alexander the Great. And his feet were as the feet of a bear, Persia. And his mouth is the mouth of a lion, Babylon. And the dragon, Dracon, the enchanter, the one makes you feel good. It means to enchant. Gave it. It should be it. The word is ought to. In the Greek text, it is neutered gender. gave it its power, its seat, and its great authority. And I saw one of its heads were wounded to death. I'll come back to that. A head was a capital city. A head was a mountain. And the 7 heads were 7 mountains on which the woman sits. The woman is a Babylonian system. This is not the 7 hills of Rome either. And they worshiped the dragon, who gave it its power unto the beast. And they worshiped the beast, saying, who is like unto the beast, who is able to make war with this world-ruling system? Who can make war with a new world order? And they incorporate the world into an entire corporate system. Then we see that's an it. And there was given unto it a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto it to continue 42 months. That's half of 7 years. That's the 70th week of Daniel's 70 weeks, and I'll go into that later. He opened his mouth in blasphemy against God and to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle. This is how he's attacking the saints, as the scripture says in Daniel 7 and in Daniel 8. His tabernacle. The word skine is the word tabernacle, and it means a wife for her husband's usefulness. That's the church, and them that dwell in heaven. Now, you go down here in verse 11, and I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and that's also neuter gender. And it had 2 horns like a lamb. It's going to look like Christ, but it spake like a dragon. It spake enchanting words. It's going to be a system of religion throughout the world, and it's going to have a speaker for it. Let's go on down here. I don't have time to read all of this. Let's read verse 14. Well, let's read 13, I guess. And this beast doeth great wonders, so that it makes fire come down from heaven on earth in the sight of men. It's going to be a deceitful thing, because it says, and deceiveth them that dwell on the earth. So those that think they're seeing fire from heaven was a term that meant the truth coming down from God. God said, it's not my word of fire, and Israel is wood there in Jeremiah 3 and 14. He says, my word is a fire. And we see that God's word is a fire in Jeremiah the 23rd chapter, and it breaks everything in pieces. And we see fire sitting up on each of those in Acts 2. It doesn't mean literal fire. Fire in the sense, fire from the mouth of the prophet. Elijah called fire from heaven. Fire from heaven was proof that a man was telling truth. So it's going to pretend to tell truth. And deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by means of those miracles, Simeon, indicators, signs, which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth, that they should make an image. The word is the same word as predestined to conform to his image. It's the word icon. And it depends on what context you're talking in. It means representation. And that word image there is feminine gender. That is the harlot right there. That's the evil world system of religion. It's feminine gender. Now, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make a representation to the beast. They've made a representation. It is a Babylonian system of self, or let us make us a name. That's the religion. It tolerates all other religions. It doesn't offend anybody. It doesn't offend the flesh. It fulfills the flesh. Which had the wound by the sword and did live. I'm going to come back and cover that. That's talking about the outlawing of the old pagan Roman Empire and being reinstituted into Roman Catholicism. And it had power to give life unto the image of the beast. It's not talking about life in the sense of making, first of all, the image is feminine. So it's not a thing. It's not a computer somewhere. It's not a system. It is a feminine. It would be a system only in the sense that it's a false religion. And life doesn't mean who has the power to give life. Jesus said, I am the resurrection. This is the same thing as saying, man, that new manager went in that company, he brought that company alive. Made it alive. He gave it life. When you walk in the room, you just liven things up and you kind of bring life into the party. That's the same thing it's talking about. It's talking about a system having life. First of all, Satan doesn't resurrect anybody to life. When you see vampire movies, that's a fairy tale and you can watch that. Nobody's bringing the dead to life but Jesus. And he don't bring vampires to life, which were demons. And there we are on another subject, aren't we? And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast. It's going to have life in the sense it's going to tell the world, it's going to speak for the beast. That the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast world system should be killed. And it causeth all, both great and small, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark or the name of the beast. Mark and name are the same thing. Notice what it says. You can't buy or sell unless you have the mark or the name. Or means, here's another, when you see or, means this word is the same as this word. Right? Name is the word onoma. The Old Testament word is shem. It means authority. And God's authority is His law. And what is the authority of the beast? What was the mark of the beast? Its authority. In Genesis 11:4, they said, let us build us a city and a tower, and let us make us a name, Shem, authority. And their authority was self, wasn't it? Self. So those who are into self, they have the mark in their forehead. To have something in the forehead did not mean to put a mark literally on your forehead. It meant to put it in your mind. To have it on your hand meant to the work that you did. It's the same thing you find in Deuteronomy, that 6th chapter. Deuteronomy 6. You can look at this. God tells Israel in Deuteronomy 6, this is having a mark. Charagma comes from karax, meaning a stake on a boundary line, and that started in the garden. Do not eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, because what you eat of is all that's in the world. That takes money to buy everything in the world. The lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. That's all that's in the world. There was a stake there. The word mark is the word charagma. It means an etching or an authority. It comes from the word character, character. What is the character of the beast? What is your character? Your character is not your reputation. Your reputation is what people think you are. Your character is what you are when nobody's around. And that's the mark of the beast. The character of the beast is self. So those that have it in their forehead, just like the Lord says here in Deuteronomy 6. He says it here. Deuteronomy 6, Hear, O Israel, verse 4, the Lord our God is one Lord, and thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thine heart, with all thy soul, with all thy might, and be obedient to Him. And these words which I command thee this day shall be in thine heart. Thou shalt teach them diligently unto thy children, and shalt talk of them when thou sittest in thine house, and when thou walkest by the way, when thou liest down, when thou risest up. And thou shalt bind them for a sign upon thine hand, and they shall be as frontlets between thine eyes. The Jews thought that meant to put a phylactery on their arm, a little black box with these verses in it. They thought it meant to put a black box up here. Some people think it means to put a computer chip up here, something here. That is so outdated. We have DNA now. Don't we? It's not talking about that. When you see Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots, upon her forehead was a name written. To be bound to something or to have a mark All of the harlots or the prostitutes back in the first century had a band around their head in the Greek world to show who their pimp was, who they were serving. She's not Babylon. She is the servant of Babylon. And that's what this image is here, isn't it? So it's taking an authority in your mind and upon your hand. The Lord says, whatever your hand finds to do, do it with your might. Do it all in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. Do it all to the glory of God. Then he says here, and that no man might buy or sell famine. It's hard enough to buy and sell today in our day and time to get along with the world when you're standing in truth, isn't it? It's real difficult. Save they had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666, and it's not that stupid, silly movie, The Omen. 6 is the number of man. This is gematria, is what it is. The word Saturn in the ancient world, remember the Saturnalia, the Feast of Saturn, where all this started at Babylon? Is stir, and it adds up to 666. And people come up and say, well, in English gematria don't count. That's not Bible. The Bible is written in Greek and Hebrew. They found in the catacombs of Rome, they ran across an inscription in the catacombs that said, I love her whose name is 545. That was gematria. So what this is talking about, we can go into all kinds of. 6 is the number of man. Man works 6 days and 7 he rests. God creates man in on the 6th day. He rests the 7th. You got 6 and 7 all through the Scriptures. That's what this is talking about. As far as knowing exactly who this person is, Hitler adds up to 666. Nero added up to 666. You can't start guessing about people. This is gematria. And I've worked on this for years. And I don't know who or what. I just know 6 is the number of man. And it will be the number or name of the beast. So the number equals the name, and the name is authority, and God's authority is his law. We are sealed with God's law in our foreheads in Revelation the 7th chapter, aren't we? We're sealed. What does that mean? We got a stamp on our head? No. It's in our mind. It's in our thoughts. God has brought it in our mind and our hearts. We believe God. I'm out of time, Anna. I hope this is sobering. Let's pray. Father, we thank you for truth. Thank you for your word. Cause us to continue this message. Open up the doors. Let us see these truths. God, we'll praise you and glorify you for all things. Lord, I don't even know how to ask you to strengthen the flock because, Lord, this is depressing in a world that don't believe you. Give us strength and courage and open up many, many opportunities for the ministry. Lord, I'll preach out there if they shoot me, Lord. I'm just tired of a world that hates the God I believe in. We thank you for your word. Deal with our hearts and crush us and give you praise for all things. In Christ's name, amen.